Welcome to the Late Late Supply Chain Show with your host, Bill Dubois. Special guests include from Nimble Storage, Stacy Cornelius. From Bristol Miles Squibb, Tony Savoca. And from Kinaxis, Trevor Miles.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out to the session today. We really appreciate giving up an hour, especially this close to lunch, or as we call it on day 2, nap time. So how many people were out late last night? Just a few. We won't judge you any differently. So it's great to be here. Kinaxis, we're celebrating a lot. It's been a great year for us, so we're lots to celebrate. We're going to be talking about innovation, supply chain visibility, 3D vision. So in that theme, we're giving away some Google Glasses. So you're all automatically entered for the Google Glasses. If you want to up your chances a little bit, drop by the booth and get your badge scanned. So anybody out there ever try Google Glasses? No, a few. So that'll be a cool prize. So probably the biggest thing going on at Kinaxis right now is the fact that we've been doing the Late Late Supply Chain Show for 5 years now. So thank you, both of you. We've been doing this. It's primarily at our user conference, which you're all invited to, by the way. We actually have a lot of non-users there, a lot of prospects. So we're actually changing the name to the Wannabe User Conference. So it's in Orlando or in San Diego. So you're all welcome to join us there. And if you don't have a place to stay, maybe Trevor will have room in his suite. He has the penthouse suite all the time. Anyway, so on a personal note, I'm actually celebrating my 25th wedding anniversary this month. So yeah, big deal. Yeah, I see all the single people are going, ooh, yeah. Well, anyway, but yeah, it's to the same woman. It's which is good, apparently. And but my wife was here last year. She couldn't be here this year, so somebody actually took a picture of her, and she's in the Gartner brochure this year. So if you go to page 2 of the Gartner, that's my wife. So I'm telling everybody I'm now married to a supermodel, and I show them that picture. So thank you, Gartner, for making my dreams come true and being able to be married to a supermodel. So that's good. But yeah, it's great. Lots of celebration going on here. So if I do the math on that, 25 years, so that puts me, I guess, 89 this month. You know, 80s when we got married. Speaking of the 80s, does anybody have their cell phone from 1980, from the 80s? Nobody? Nobody has their cell phone from the 80s? No. So it's interesting, the advancements in that technology. But when you think about our supply chain technology, we're still using, you know, the same technology we used back in the 80s. And, you know, so that's what we're going to talk about. We really felt at Kinaxis and on the Late Late Show that there was a need for, you know, an advancement in that technology. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of spreadsheets. I use them every day. I put together really valuable information that I can share with other people. So yeah, I love them, but like your cell phone, it would still work today if you had that 80 cell phone, but you need it to do a little bit more. You want other people to participate. You want to hit the World Wide Web. You want to share information with others, maybe take a video or a selfie so all those other people can see what you see when you see it. So we really think there's a need for innovation, and I'm going to be honest, not all of our ideas at Kinaxis actually made it to market. So as an example, anybody out there struggling with expedites? Do you have, you know, you're paying premium freight and things like that. So we had the concept, the first ones in the market to have the concept of reverse delivery, where we'd actually take the assembly to the components. But that didn't work. The other idea that we had is, you know, you're on the line and you need to move resources from one work center to the other. Well, we wanted to automate that process and immediately take resources to where they're needed. But we did find other uses for that, so I think that's a good thing. So, but we still kept at it. We're still working on innovation, and you don't have to go any further than a coffee shop to understand why there's a need for innovation. So, back in the 80s, it was either black or with cream or sugar. And you think about today, you think, customers want choice, lots of products that you're introducing, maybe some products you're taking off the shelf. Those coffee folks, they have to deal with fair trade. You've got supplies in different regions and countries, so a real challenge. I know when I first saw this analogy, my first thought was, do employees at Red Rose take coffee breaks? And I'm still thinking about that, and that's probably why at Kinaxis I'm known as the assistant manager of Afterthought. And so to add some credibility to the show, that's why we have our VP of Thought Leadership here. So I'd like to welcome the person that adds the credibility. So down your espressos, and please welcome Trevor Miles to the stage.
Thank you, Bill. So I watched.
You can stand up if you want.
Yes, I was. That's a good idea, because I was going to comment on the fact that I'd watched John Kern on stage yesterday, and he couldn't decide whether to sit back and look relaxed or sit forward and looked engaged, because he had one of these soft seats. But I think it's far better to stand up. So I just want to capture some of the themes we've heard, not just at the conference, but over the last few months, over the last few years, of the changes we've seen within the supply chain space. And we're hearing a lot about visibility. Everybody's talking about it. But I want to make the statement that visibility is a lot more than just switching the lights on. But many people are taking this approach. They feel that it's just about getting the data into one place. Now, I agree that that's a really important thing. Gartner put it into stage 3 in the maturity curve, because it is a really important aspect. If you don't have the data, if you can't actually see what's there. But what's more important is that visibility is really defined as the distance at which an object or light can be clearly discerned. So it's a lot more than just turning the lights on. It's about getting clarity. It's about understanding what that data means. Is it going according to what your plans are? Is it going to be fulfilling your customers' expectations? Is it going to be satisfying your financial projections? So it's not enough simply to get the data. You have to interpret it, understand what the meaning is. But we've also been hearing a lot about the need for T-shaped people, in the sense that they have breadth and they have depth. You still need your functional expertise, but we hear all about these people, the orchestrators, who need to be able to see end-to-end across the supply chain. But we hear far too little, in my opinion, about the T-shaped processes, where you still have to have the functional capabilities that you have in place, but how do you link them? How do you get them together? So what happens between the functions is as important as what happens within the functional silos. So Tom Peters was talking about this in his opening keynote about the cross-functional collaboration and communication. Extremely important. We believe that this is a really failed part of the whole landscape, is how do you enable that collaboration communication? How do you capture all of that collaboration communication between the functions? Because we're doing it now ad hoc through Excel, phone, emails, all of these type of things. Because supply chain is a team sport, and yet we play it in this manner. I just saw something in LinkedIn. It depresses the heck out of me, but there was a long stream of discussion about who owns the forecast. My response was simple. We own the forecast. And by that, I mean everyone owns the forecast. Who owns customer satisfaction? We own customer satisfaction. It's not about the individuals, and yet we still behave in this way. It is about bringing the team together, bringing everybody to work and understand their individual roles, but how those roles interact with others with a shared purpose of winning that overall game. We've got defensive roles, we've got offensive roles. We get measured differently, but our key objective should be to bring the whole team to success, the whole team to win, and we are not there yet. End-to-end planning. So there's a triple D in the session, and this is the 3D that I'm talking about here. And why do I hear so often that people, they question all of the change management that is required to get to end-to-end planning? I know it's quite difficult, and I know it's difficult to conceive. And it's not easy to see how you could get to the space because we're not used to seeing with this level of clarity, this level of understanding. But my contention is that we're actually doing a lot of these processes right now just in an informal manner. So the question is, how do we bring all of those informal processes back into a formal process so that you can actually understand how this information flows along the supply chain and how those different functions then interact with each other to create this end-to-end visibility. And it is the story we've been telling for some time, and I wanted to bring up the Magic Quadrant to show all of you because I think many of you have seen it, but I'm not allowed to show it at a Gartner conference. So what can I say? Please come to our website, have a look at that, our booth. You can see where different vendors are placed, but as importantly, it's the definition of what that planning system of record is. And a lot of it is about what I've just been speaking about, connecting the dots across the different functions, enabling that end-to-end process as much as it is about the individual capabilities in each of those plan, source, make, deliver roles. It's about connecting the dots, bringing them together, enabling that cross-functional capability. Okay, well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Trevor. Just before we continue, I think what I'll do is I'm going to hold off my Q&A for you, Trevor, and we'll get through our presentations. And there are, in case you weren't here when we announced this, you might see some little black boxes on some of the chairs. They're there for the taking. They're actually little speakers for your computer, so cool stuff. I talked to some people from Shure Microphone yesterday. They're not Shures, so don't go use them if you play in a band or anything like that, but it's still good stuff. The other thing, we'll save the Q&A for the end. So if you ask a question, we're giving out some T-shirts. So these make, I know I speak for myself, they make great painting shirts. If you've got a project on the go and you need a painting shirt, you can come up and get one of these. So I just found out our next guest actually is a musician and he might prefer the microphone. So if you have questions for Tony, it can't be what song will you sing for us. It'll have to be supply chain related. But please welcome to the stage from Bristol Myers Squibb, Tony Savoca.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Trevor. Okay. That's me. All right, well, hi, everybody. My name's Tony Savoca. I'm from Bristol Myers Squibb. We're a pharmaceutical company in New Jersey. Up there is our mission statement. We help sick people. We help them improve their quality of life. And it's a great mission, and I'm very happy to be part of that company. That guy in that picture is actually Dr. Squibb. He's actually a real person. He and his two sons founded a pharmaceutical company in the... Is that picking me up over there, too? No. He and his two sons founded a pharmaceutical company in the late 1800s. It's merged with Bristol and Myers in 1989, and that's the company we are today. The company is constantly reinventing itself, and we're going through another reinvention of ourselves right now. When Christian asked me to speak today, I was a little surprised because really we've only been a customer of Kinaxis for about a year now. We started our implementation in March of 2013. We went live in November of 2013. And I really thought I didn't have a lot to cover, but Christian said, well, people would want to hear your story. And then I realized my story is like a lot of project plans and requirements documents, and nobody's going to want to hear that. So I decided maybe I'll just talk a little bit about some of the lessons that I learned going through that project, really going through the whole transformation as part of the supply chain IT team. So let me go back to BMS in 2010. I show up, company hires me, and they say, you're going to be in charge of our supply chain technology. except there wasn't any supply chain technology. We had Excel, and tons of it, and more coming. So, and our users would pull the data out of the SAP system. We have a single instance of SAP. They'd populate it into an Excel spreadsheet. They'd hack around with it for a little while. And then they'd figure out, or they would think they'd figure out what was going on in the supply chain space, and they would make some decisions off of that. And it was a pretty tough time. We really didn't have a lot of handle on what was going on. We had a set of technologies that looked like that, and we had a supply chain that looked a little like that, and we had some planners, they looked a little like that. And a lot of people say that guy in the upper right-hand corner looks like a young Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, he does.
I don't see it, I don't know. But. And that was Take Your Pets to Work Day, I think, over there. So you can imagine, it was a little hectic, and we were trying to figure out a way to move the company forward because we had a lot of big plans. We were going to bring some new and very innovative products to market that were going to help some very sick people. And we knew that if we didn't take the time to develop a new supply chain strategy and a new set of supply chain technologies and capabilities, we weren't going to be able to do that, and that was going to be an unacceptable outcome. So we fast forward 4 years, and here I am, and we're well on that journey and moving down the path towards supply chain excellence. And we've implemented things like forecasting, we've implemented supply planning, and we've got some stuff coming up around inventory optimization, sales and operations planning, more things that are designed to raise our maturity level in the supply chain space. I think so I learned a few things during this time here, and the first one is, you got to have a vision for how it's going to look when you get to the end, and you got to have a roadmap. And, oh, I skipped one, right? Yeah, so this was another point that I wanted to make here. So this is, that's a quote from a Romanian sculptor. I found it on the internet. The guy is known as the father of modern sculpture, and I just thought it was so relevant to what we've been talking about. The idea is for us, we needed to just go from that to that and put some technology and new thinking and capabilities in place to get us there, okay? So now I'll go back to the roadmap idea. It really is a long and winding road, as the great Sir Paul McCartney said, right?
I was trying to get Tony to sing the song, but he wouldn't.
We're not going to sing today. We started our transformation journey, and it really, along the way, we got off the highway and did some other projects. We stopped some projects, started some other projects, and I think what I learned was there is really no way to jump from this level of maturity to this level of maturity just by implementing a bunch of disconnected projects. And I remember the first roadmap that I saw was actually given to me by a colleague, and it had on it, we're going to do a new forecasting system, we're going to do a new supply planning system, we're going to do an inventory optimization system, and we're going to do S&OP. We're also going to clean up all of our data, change the way we release products from a quality perspective. We're going to finish all of that in 18 months. And I said, that's a little too aggressive, and the guy that wrote up the plan called me a lot of names. But at the end of the day, what we wound up doing really was taking a much slower approach to it and implementing things that we could build upon and sustain for the long term. Second thing I learned is you have to be tolerant of ambiguity. We're building models of a supply chain, and they're all wrong, right? The models are wrong, but they are telling us something, and we have to figure out what that something is. And that's where the human being comes in. No system that I've ever been able to build, right, is going to think for a person. If you guys have one, I'd be very happy to find out about it. But there is no such thing as far as I know. People have to think, and they have to use the tool to actually make some decisions. And that's a pretty hard thing to do. There's no easy button that you just press and poof, you have an optimized supply chain. I wish there was. I wish I had invented it. I mean, I'd probably be pretty wealthy today. So you can't just have things happen. I think we underestimate how much time people were spending doing those spreadsheets and viewing that as work. And now you give them some information that your model tells them, and they now have a whole bunch of more time on their hands that they could actually be doing the analysis on that information. But they kind of don't necessarily know how. They haven't upped that skill yet. So that's pretty critical, I think, to learn that going forward. I think the third thing I learned is around change management. Everything we're doing is really change management. I mean, my boss isn't here, so I'll tell you, the technology part was not too hard. Mike's here, and I think he knows processes are pretty well understood, right, Mike? I mean, they're written about in books and articles. We should be able to know how to do this kind of stuff. What's hard is people have to change, and they don't want to change. And I think what I learned was we would go out to these people. I went out with a colleague of mine, and we were talking to a group that I felt should have been kind of threatened by what we were doing from a supply chain transformation. And they were all happy and wonderful. Oh, this is great. You know, we're going to have this new system. It's going to be wonderful. I was like, hey, you guys really should probably feel a little more threatened about this than you do. And we left that meeting thinking we must have convinced them, right? They must have convinced them. Well, we didn't really convince them. What happened was they were just kind of biding their time a little bit to kind of show that they were not happy with this change. And so what winds up happening is towards the end of the project is when you start to see that, that kind of derailing almost. That's when, or after you've actually deployed it, even worse, is when people start to come out of the woodwork and start to point out kind of what was wrong with what you had done up to that point. And then I think the last thing that I learned is how important sustainability was. And I don't mean sustainability like in terms of reducing your CO2 emissions and things like that. I'm talking about sustaining what you built. And I don't think we fully realized how hard that was going to be. It's not enough to have a couple of guys at the help desk who are waiting to get that call that says, oh, this technology doesn't work like I thought it would, or have a SharePoint site with some documents on there, and they're probably outdated anyway, and work instructions and things like that. That's not really what I mean. We need some way of actively sustaining this, this solution and keeping it going and keeping it fresh for people. And I don't think you can do that either with someone giving them that as sort of their part-time job in addition to their full-time role. So I wish we had thought about that in terms of a COE a little earlier and kind of set that up. And I think the interesting thing was some of our peer companies that are customers of Kinaxis actually told us up front, consider how you're going to sustain this in the long term and consider establishing a COE. And we sort of listened, but we didn't really take action on it, and I kind of wish we had. So those are really the kind of the 4 lessons I learned. Keeping in the model of brevity that Trevor started with, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. I think what we do here is, as supply chain people, is really the heartbeat of our organizations, and it's really important to our companies, especially I feel in my company, getting that medicine out to people who need it. So, and I wish you all a lot of success on your transformation journeys as well. Thank you. Do I sit here?
Thanks, Tony. Just
Thanks, Bill.
couple questions.
Yeah.
Beatles or Rolling Stones?
I gotta say Beatles, Bill.
Okay,
I gotta
okay.
say Beatles. Yep.
Show of hands, who agrees with Tony?
Come on, Beatles, Beatles,
Rolling
Beatles.
Stones. I just wish we didn't have to choose.
I know.
Actually, just before Stacy comes up, can you talk a little bit about, I promise not to hog all the Q&A, it's not that I want a shirt or anything like that, but can you talk a little bit about what it was like in your environment when you decided that you needed to change? What was that breaking point that you said, okay, we need to do something different?
I think it was a realization that we were not going to be able to sustain our performance as an organization. Even though at that time we were a very successful company, we were delivering medicines all around the world and growing and all of that. We just knew that we weren't going to be able to sustain it, and the supply chain for us was growing more and more complex. So we knew that our future held things like a postponement strategy, and we knew that our future held things like personalized medicine, which is where the actual drug is tailored to the patient who's going to take it. And those things are still a little further away from us today, but we have to begin thinking about them now and really from back a couple of years ago in order to be prepared for them when they come so that we can sustain our company.
Trevor, any comments on that?
I'd love to ask Tony one little question quickly. There was a little statement you made that intrigued me. You said the software was easy, the processes were in place, change was difficult.
Yeah.
Now, the question from my side is, is technology an enabler or an inhibitor?
Sometimes I wonder that too, you know.
Yes. And how have you found it with Kinaxis?
Well, I think with Kinaxis, it's becoming an enabler. I think just like every learning curve, you have a little of a dip, but I think we're learning more and more how to use it each day and kind of getting better at it. But I think one thing is, with Kinaxis, with the capability of creating scenarios, we can create so many of them that we can actually wind up misleading ourselves.
Yeah.
And without some discipline around that, you forget what you were going to do with that scenario and what you meant and maybe what assumptions you made going into it. And you make another one and another one and another one, and you wind up actually forgetting that, and you may make a bad decision off of that.
Sure, but I like Tom Peters' statement this morning that strategy is as much eliminating what you don't want to do from deciding what it is that you do want to do. Yeah. So being able to explore many alternatives and rejecting them is
pretty
key
powerful.
Yeah.
And with Excel, all of those things that you would have to do, you would have to develop all those models from scratch.
Yes.
They're pretty hard to do, so you spend a lot of time doing that. You can't evaluate as many alternatives. I think you got to strike a balance there, but I think you have to find it.
Yes, I'm government.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Thanks, Bill.
I think we need to...
Just out of curiosity, we'll leave time for Q&A, but just to judge how much time we would leave, is there anybody that has a question for Tony right now? Show of hands. Okay, so there's a few here. I'll make sure we leave time for those questions. Trevor, I just realized why you're our thought leader. I need to get an accent like that. Like everything, 2 + 2 is 5. Everybody believes that, Anyway,
Thank you, Bill.
one day, I'm gonna,
I'm glad you appreciate
I'm gonna get
my
a promotion
intelligence
from
and
my
not my
assistant
accent.
manager of Afterthought and be a thought leader myself. But
pretty important.
so our next guest, I found out we had something in common. Any hockey fans out there? A few, yeah. Well, the one thing I found in common is that neither of our teams are in the playoffs right now. So, so hopefully we can cheer you up and cheer you other hockey fans up. Please welcome Stacy Cornelius from Nimble Storage.
Thank you. Oh, there. All right, am I on here? Hi, I'm Stacy, and I'm from a data storage company called Nimble Storage, and that's not me. Here we go. So interestingly, my story I'm going to talk about is actually a good contrast because it's pretty much the complete opposite of Tony's. Nimble is a smaller company. We went public last December, so we're growing very, very quickly. We've had, over the last 2 years, over 100% growth each year. So some of the challenges we've had are a little bit different to implementing some of these tools when you're at a much larger company. Interestingly also, this is actually the third company I'm at where we're implementing Kinaxis. The first one was way back in the late 90s when Kinaxis was actually still called WebPlan. So had some good experiences in both big companies and now at Nimble, which is a much smaller company. And interestingly, we also took a kind of a different approach in that the problem we were trying to solve when we started looking at Kinaxis was issues with our service logistics planning. So in the data storage industry, one of the critical components of every unit we ship is that a service contract is sold with that. And that service contract can be for next business day parts replacement or 4-hour parts replacement globally. So that means at any given time when we receive an order, we've got to be ready within 2 weeks to make sure that we've got inventory for field replaceable units in the right place and able to meet those service contracts from the point of install going forward. So when we started this kind of journey, we knew we wanted to pick a tool that would allow us to look at the end-to-end planning cycle, so S&OP and order promising and looking at visibility with our contract manufacturing partners, et cetera. But what we chose as phase one was the service logistics side of planning. So I put up here kind of the very simple statement was we need to make sure that at any given time we've got the right inventory in the right spot, able to meet any of those contracts that we've got. So we needed really good visibility. We needed a very quick process that we could look at every single day. So you can see there on the key requirements, one of the things was we needed to be able to run this process daily and execute daily. We needed to be able to load data from quite a few different systems. We, I think, have taken service planning to a new level in that we not only look at all of our historical failure rates, MTBF, and your analyzed failure rates, et cetera, but we also have a set of data scientists in our customer support group who predict failures as well. And so they've really helped us to incorporate the age of all the systems in the field. Anybody who deals with disk drives knows that innately you've got issues with failures as they age. So we were taking information about our installed base, we were taking information from our third-party logistics providers that were holding our inventory, all of our ERP information, cost, et cetera, as well as the failure rates and the predictive failure rates. And we basically were looking for a tool that would allow us to run a model on a daily basis to predict where we needed inventory and when. And then for me personally, I wanted a dashboard view where you've got people on your team who are executing this process on a daily basis. I really wanted that view that I could log into every morning and just see the dashboard, the red, yellow, green, to know whether or not we were in control or out of control. Right now, we manage about 75 depots around the world with this process. We add anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 depots a quarter as the business grows. So we really also wanted something that would scale with us as we grow. And then you can see on the bottom, the old process was 50 steps, and it took 4 to 5 hours. And there's one person that manages this whole process for the company. So what we found was we couldn't run it daily. He was spending all of his time running the model and tweaking the model versus really doing the analytics and executing on the model. So clearly, we chose Kinaxis. I wouldn't be standing here, I guess. And we went live in February with this first phase. And again, we told everyone in the ops organization, we're not going to look at Kinaxis for anything other than this first phase. Let's get it in quick, efficiently, and then we'll expand as the capabilities as we go. We have already delivered benefits after the first 3 months. So we just finished our first quarter. And out of 524 RMAs that shipped during the quarter, we had 0 stockouts, and we missed 0 RMAs due to inventory, which was a huge improvement over what we had when we were doing this just on Excel spreadsheets. We also thought I'd just give you kind of a snapshot so you know that it's really implemented. This was kind of that dashboard I mentioned that is kind of my view every morning that we look at, and it's actually on the rotating dashboard, one of the rotating dashboards we have up in the operations area. But what this basically does is when you look at the dashboard, all you have to worry about are the reds. So immediately every morning, the planners come in, or the planner comes in and looks at if there's any reds, and immediately starts taking action on those with our service providers. The yellows are actually not yellow as in that you've got risk, but yellow in that you've got excess, because as you guys all know, in the inventory world, excess is as bad as not having enough. And so what the planner now can do is be a lot more effective at when they see something that has a shortage, they can make the right decision on should they rebalance across depots to save cost and make sure we utilize inventory, or do they need to go choose inventory from a hub and replenish? So this was a critical report that we do, and you can, of course, sort it any way you want. I will say one of my favorite things, Tony talked a lot about change management, and previous company I was at was a much larger multi-billion-dollar company, and change management was definitely one of our challenges as well. But one of the things I've always found with Kinaxis is planners usually, in supply chain in general, people love Excel. And getting the adoption of Kinaxis compared to a few of the other planning tools that I've used in the past has been a lot easier because it does feel a lot like the technology that you see with Excel, as you can see right here. So that was something that I think allowed us to get the adoption faster, both in the larger company as well as in my current experience here at Nimble. So our new process is run daily. We still only have one planner, and we plan to only have one planner in this area for a while. It takes less than 30 minutes, and basically it has allowed us for that individual to spend a lot more of their time on inventory optimization and on logistics cost modeling and driving down service margins in other areas. So he's not spending as much time on just putting all the reports together. It's also really helped us with data accuracy. So as we start kind of the next journey, one of the things that was really important is a lot of that data that was being fed in that's now electronic, they don't have the opportunity to clean it up as it's being imported. So the Kinaxis spreadsheets or workbooks that have been put together for us to manage our data accuracy has also been a very critical piece to making this successful. So for us, a couple key learnings. We're pretty classic in that some next steps for us are S&OP and all the pieces around forecasting inventory as well as our supply-demand matching. We also are looking at available to promise functionality. We have very short lead times, so when an order comes in for us, we have less than 2 weeks to send it to our contract manufacturer, have it built, and shipped to the customer. So we want that collaboration with our suppliers so that we can make sure that the minute that order comes in and within minutes that we're committing back to our partners or our customers, that we know for sure they've got the capacity and the material. And then also COGS modeling. So gross margin is a very important element in our world. Luckily, we operate on a higher gross margin target than previous companies that I've been at. But this Kinaxis, part of our goal will be the ability, as we're looking at dual source decisions and as we're looking at new technologies, to be able to do some COGS modeling in the tool as well. So similar to what Tony talked about, just a couple other comments in terms of experience with Kinaxis, both in the current environment that I'm in now as well as at previous companies, would be, I do think the change management, of course, is very important, but I think that's extremely important with any project, making sure that you force the business to do their business process flows and rethink the process before they go and implement the tool. My favorite is when people go buy a tool and then they find out that the tool doesn't fit the process that they want. Second is data accuracy. Previous company, which was much larger, we owned our own factories, we had inventory around the world. I think that implementation probably took an extra 3 to 4 months just because we underestimated the amount of time it was going to take us to make sure all of our data feeds and the accuracy of our data was there. Good news was Kinaxis really helped us with workbooks that would allow us to keep track of that and keep the data accurate, but I think we really underestimated the importance of that data accuracy. And then I think the third one would just be biting off the project in small chunks. So one thing that happens, I think, with a lot of the planning tools is you start to get this grandiose thought of being able to see end-to-end visibility and do an 18-month, all-in type project. One of the great things about Kinaxis is it's very simple to segment and put it into a smaller phased approach and start to get benefit immediately. And that actually really helps you from a change management perspective as well. We obviously took it a unique approach in that we started at the service logistics side and we're now going to work our way back up. But it's been funny to watch the planners on the front end manufacturing side. They can't wait to get to the phase 2 where they're going to be able to get the benefits from the tool. So having the back end services team seeing the benefits and showing how it works and what they've been able to accomplish has really helped kind of start that change management process on the front end. So with that, I think that kind of just describes our journey and how we've implemented, and a little bit different. Obviously, the service logistics part is not something that Kinaxis has done a ton of, but I think we've been able to leverage the core functionality and really drive huge improvements for us from a bottom line perspective.
Just a couple questions before I turn it over to the QA. And Trevor, I'd like to just get you to recap what you just heard. But very quickly, this is a selfish question. If you've been by the booth, the Kinaxis booth, we're doing some demos and things like that. So that's my daytime job, is to show off some of the standard product. And the screenshot that you had looked familiar, but it looked like there were some things that you did differently in there. Can you talk about how much out-of-the-box resources you use versus how much you personalized?
In terms of the dashboards and so forth?
Yeah.
I think I definitely say we did more personalization, and customization is not the right word, but personalization, because we were dealing with the services side. And a lot of the standard out of the box is usually supply planning, S&OP, et cetera. But most of the dashboards look very similar to what I've seen done on the front end.
Okay, well, good. One other question. You're a San Jose Shark fan. What happened to the Sharks?
No comment.
Up 3-0. So, okay. Trevor, I'd just like to, if you take a minute just to kind of recap what you heard in those two presentations.
So from very different industries, very different market dynamics. Stacy's company has a higher gross margin than many companies in her space, but they're still dwarfed by anything that you could see in the pharmaceutical industry. And you can see the different behaviors in the different organizations, how they approach their whole supply chain and what they're looking at to extract from them. So Tony's organization, and in general pharmaceuticals, more deliberate, more careful about where they go because they have a lot of opportunity to buffer against uncertainties because of their gross margin, whereas Stacy's company needs to go very fast. They need to get the results very quickly. And Stacy, I didn't actually ask you how quickly was that first deployment? How quick was that first deployment?
It was about 6 months.
Yes.
Which was a little bit longer than.
Because of some of the customers.
Yeah, because of some of the
configuration.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the amount of data the amount of feeds we were bringing from disparate systems.
Yes. But in both cases, it's great to paint the vision, and Jane Barrett referred to this in the stage as well. But you hear both stories about going through a process of staged deployments to reach that vision. But something I want to encourage the audience to really think about is you need that vision. You need to understand what destination you're going towards. Because if you don't have that vision in mind when you take each step, then that's just random walk. So you need to put in place that vision and be very clear about that vision and very deliberate about getting to that vision. But there are times, as Tony said, well, you've got to readjust the time scale in which you're going to reach that vision because you need to bring everybody along with you. So the change management aspect is very important. And Stacy was talking about that very rapid delivery of capabilities and then being able to extend from that into other areas of the organization and other capabilities to reap additional benefits. So those are both lessons that I learned coming out of the two of them.
Thanks, Trevor. Okay. Here's your chance. If you don't want the T-shirt, you don't have to take it. But I would appreciate it if you asked a question so I don't have to put these back in my suitcase. I have no more room left. So show of hands if there's any questions out there. I'm the host and the mic guy, so I'm getting my exercise today. I was hoping somebody in the front row was going to ask a question.
So he goes all the way to the back.
I think they planted this guy at the back.
So I wanted to understand a broader perspective. Tony, you talked about wishing you had created a center of excellence. From the rest of the team or the rest of the people that spoke, I'd like to understand what you've seen work. It obviously isn't a must-have, but it isn't a complete luxury either. So where do you see and what is kind of a best practices in developing a center of excellence, especially as it comes to extracting value from an implementation?
Yeah. I don't necessarily have a great answer as to what the best practices would be, but I do have an idea of what the need is and kind of an idea of what I think it should look like. It doesn't have to be a huge organization of 100 people. I think it can be a very small organization, but you saw in Stacy's screenshots, she had the image of the screens, and it is very Excel-like. And I think what people expect in our organization is that we'll be able to make tweaks and changes to those worksheets, and it would be nice to have Center of Excellence capability of people who understand our supply chain processes, but also understand that underlying technology at some level so that they can actually go ahead and make those changes themselves in more of an agile fashion. Turn it around and say, did I get it right? Is that what you want to see? Yes or no? And then continue on from there. So that's how I'm kind of envisioning it at this point. But I think then that organization grows with us as we deploy more and more capabilities of the tool going forward.
So Stacy, what have you seen that specifically, and how do you address that same kind of
Yeah,
issue?
so in 2 instances, so the previous company, which was much larger, we did have we didn't call it a center of excellence, but we had what we called process excellence organization. And similarly, we did have across all business groups, we had at a minimum 1, if not 2 or 3 people that were called transformation, project managers. And those were very similarly the people that they did not have a tactical day-to-day job. And I've always been a huge believer right now at Nimble, I have 1 dedicated person in our operations organization that is in that type of a role. All she does is work on, what's the next set of projects that we need to go after, et cetera. So I am a huge fan of that. The nice thing about Kinaxis is the business users can do a lot of the changes in the workbooks or creating of workbooks with just a very small amount of training. The one other thing I would say that I'd add to that is you need to every quarter be looking at your roadmap. So if you think of procure to pay or forecast to delivery, wherever your planning cycle is fit, what we do is every quarter we pull out kind of what we call our heat map that looks at how we're performing across all of our processes. And that's how we prioritize what are the next set of initiatives that we're going to go after. It might be process, might be tools, but that's kind of what we called it process excellence, but it's similar to a center of excellence where you've got to get a cadence where you're constantly looking at what are your next set of initiatives that are going to get you that next cost reduction or that next process step reduction, et cetera.
Where did you get the transformation experts from? Did you pull those out of the current planning organization? Was it an outside hire? How did you source those?
Yeah. At my previous company, they were pulled out of the business. So as an example, we pulled a buyer out, and they had the whole planning and buying process. And the current company happened to steal one from that previous company, and so we hired her. But she was for years in the planning supply chain world, and she's just a great project manager, so she's fit into that role.
Great, thank you.
That only counts as 1 shirt, though. You can't have 3 of them. Okay. Does anybody right here have a question? Okay. Anybody else? Oh, here we go. This is nice and close. Now.
Tony, this is a question for you. You talked about sustainability as a key element for success of a business transformation program. Can you share your insights on what has worked, what has not worked in terms of sustainability in your organization?
I don't think we actually really thought about it up front, so that's the part that really didn't work. I think we could have done a better job planning for the need to sustain our capabilities going forward. We've got an organization that's in place that a process stewardship and a process excellence organization that's in place, and I think what we should have done with that organization was develop them a little bit more to actually play the role of sustainability, because I think it's an unusual role. I think you're kind of in it. You're kind of like part trainer, part mentor, part consultant, and all of that. Those capabilities have to be brought together to actually do that job and be able to sustain that capability going forward. I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it right now.
Did that help? Okay. Was there another question? Oh, right here. Give you that, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to start by saying I never feel bad for hockey teams. We're up in Toronto, and I think in Toronto we just accept the hockey season ends in April every year. So.
You're a Toronto fan? I'll take that shirt back. Okay.
My question was more about the project design leading into it and the ROI analysis that you both may have done, and what type of return on investment period have you looked at, and how difficult was it to sell to the senior team?
I'll start. The best part about being at a small company and getting to make that decision this time without a whole lot of bureaucracy was we did not do a full study like I've seen done in much larger organizations. We really used it as an opportunity to not have to hire a few people, and we purely modeled it and went through the capital committee, et cetera, with just showing where the headcount elimination was going to be. And then the second piece was the inventory optimization and what it could do from a cash flow perspective, being a startup where cash is important. So we did not do a full ROI. We really did it with those two things that would allow us to eliminate the headcount, and second thing was keep our inventory costs way down.
Thanks,
Probably
Stacy.
did a much more elaborate ROI.
Well, I think that was good. I mean, I think, did our VP of Finance tell you to ask that question? Sounds like something she would be asking, doesn't it?
Right up here. Just a quick question before I leave. Gary, I was just wondering, who do Toronto Maple Leaf fans cheer for in the playoffs? Are you cheering for Montreal? Okay, good. Okay, here, I got one T-shirt left. And then after this, we're giving out free iPads if you ask a question. Did I get that right?
Bill, there's
We
one
give
up
out
front.
the good prize first.
Hi, appreciate both of you and the time that you've taken today. But quick question regarding your vendor selection on your decision. First of all, how you came from a land of many spreadsheets, developed somehow an idea of what you wanted to go for in terms of product selection, and understanding your current business processes and how Kinaxis would fit into that. Understanding how you understood your current state and determined through your gap analysis process or whatever you did that Kinaxis would best fit your solution.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, I want to implement APO. I want to implement APO bad. We're an SAP shop, and I know how to do it. And I was afraid because one of the struggles that we've had over the years is integrating other things into our SAP ecosystem. But when we started to look out in the marketplace at the tools that were there, the APO environment just seemed like it was very old, I guess, and very staid. And the Kinaxis solution, and we did look at some others as well, but the Kinaxis solution was, first of all, it was cloud-based, which was appealing to us as an organization. That was a direction we were moving in. And it was really able to do things more rapidly. Things I knew we could do in the APO environment, but we would never be able to do them at the pace that we're now able to do them. So that really drove our decision, I think, towards the cloud-based solutions, towards Kinaxis.
Very similar. We were in an Oracle shop previous company, and we actually I lost the first battle, and we did go down the Demantra path for the first piece of the project. And very quickly, I think IT and the business came to the conclusion that the speed was just really challenging. And as we started to look at additional functionality, everything was more licensing. And so that by itself pretty much sold us on going with a cloud-based solution and a product that was, I hate to use the word nimble, but more nimble in how you could implement it. So.
Great, thanks. I think we have time for one more question. There are probably no more questions because there's no more T-shirts left. Oh.
Hi, we're actually a big customer of Kinaxis, so really appreciate the product and all that. So I have a kind of a forward question. Everybody's talking about big data, predictive analytics, and all this kind of stuff. And I think our Kinaxis experts here know the difference between what their tools, basically do versus something that's much more out into that big data and predictive analytics space. What are you both thinking of in terms, I think that there's going to be a kind of a next stage, I could imagine, in your companies, and then how are you working with your executives also to help them understand the differences between these tools? Yeah, kind of open question, but.
It's actually pretty easy for us. So one of the advantages that Nimble has from our overall product is we have a tool called InfoSight, which allows our customers to predict issues with their systems that are in the field. So most customers that are using our system, they're in their data centers and they've got production data and they don't have the ability to have any downtime. Kinaxis happens to be using anybody who's using the Kinaxis product, you're actually running on it. A lot of your stuff is running on a Nimble system. We use InfoSight, and it is a predictive tool. So there's a lot of knowledge inside of our company on the difference between a planning tool and a optimization tool versus predictable, looking forward and predicting. But I mentioned that we are taking a lot of the data on that from our customer support side and predicting failures, et cetera. So we're kind of merging those two strategies together and just leveraging Tableau and Vertica and all those other big data type tools for what they're very good at, and haven't had to convince anybody.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we still use a lot of BI, BW, because we do have a big SAP footprint. We also use Spotfire, which is a tool that we're very interested in. I think for us, the big problem is getting all of the data that's all scattered around in the other systems together in some place where we could actually make use of it and then report off of it. We haven't done too much in the way of predictive analytics yet. It's something that we think will be meaningful to us in the future, but we're sort of just scratching the surface. Really, at this point, really what we've done is basic statistical analysis, and that's about the extent of it for us. I think there's more to come on that.
I think that whole space is a really interesting one where you're going to add the predictive and prescriptive analytics, where the predictive might be saying to Stacy's group that some certain units, you can see they get an increased failure above and beyond what they expect. They can now bring that into the supply chain side and say, well, what is that going to mean to us if that failure rate continues in that manner? So, service parts requirements, additional purchase requirements, all of these types of things can be wrapped up.
Thanks. Well, that just about does it. Thanks very much for coming out. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. But please give a round of applause for our guests, Stacy, Tony, and our own Trevor. Thanks very much.